Welcome to Kingdom in Context. The Creator never intended for us to be confused by His words. He gave us His words of life, and He gave them in context, to be understood and beneficial to our walk with Him. This channel's goal is to bring clarity to some of the misconceptions that have formed over time among believers and taught by others, however innocent and well-intended. The Scriptures make complete sense when we keep them in context of His coming kingdom and His coming King, Jesus the Messiah. If you're blessed by what we're doing with this channel and feel led to support us, visit the video description below where we have a PayPal option, a monthly Patreon option, or a traditional P.O. Box address. Thank you, and remember, context creates comprehension. Welcome, fellow brave believers. This is Kingdom Cast. I'm Sean Griffin. Thanks for joining me tonight. We're going to talk about Babylon tonight, past, present, and future. We're investigating all things surrounding this topic of Babylon, both ancient Babylon, present Babylon, and this concept we see in Revelation and prophecy that we talk about future Babylon, or sometimes referred to as mystery Babylon, something that receives judgment leading up to and during the second coming of Yeshua. So there's a lot to discuss. That's why I titled this thumbnail Part 1, because there's so many facets of this topic. It's something I've researched for quite a few years, and it's just cannot be covered in one or two actual episodes. So I actually don't even know how many episodes or how many parts in this series that we'll cover with this, because there's so many things that go into this, and I hope to do every component piece justice as we look at it. So I want to thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and there's already quite a few people in the chat. Big Red G, Stephen Schofield, Sean Clarkson, Paul Levi, Earl Rogers, David Shearer. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being here. All the admins and moderators, thank you for being here. Miss Marcia's here. Royce Bale, Blood Saves, Stephen Belk, Mary W., Cover to Cover with Jeremy Piers, AC, A Disciple, Miss Sky is here tonight, Carla Malberg, let me see here, Livinus Gordon, Bill Craddock, A Disciple, Jubion Kenobi. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. The Line with Dennis is back. Welcome, brother. Good to see you. Official Mike Maranatha. Yes, D Love, Pixie from Dixie. It's always a fun name. Welcome, everyone. I appreciate it. And tonight is, as always, guys, if you haven't already subscribed, do that. Now's your chance. It's the time. Hit the subscribe button. Click the bell for notifications. As you probably saw the intro coming in, there is a new social media coming. It's called Lighthouse. We're super excited about it. It's going to be the best of Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube combined. And even Etsy, a selling platform. So it's truly revolutionary. There's a patent pending on it. That's how revolutionary it is, because it addresses a lot of the issues, and there'll be no censorship. So you actually get to speak freely, obviously within the confines of the First Amendment and all the legalities that flow with that. But you can't incite violence. You can't incite, rebellion against your actual government to the point of becoming a domestic terrorist. You can't do any of that stuff, but you get to speak your mind freely. If you have a political dissenting opinion, if you have a religious opinion, if you have a medical opinion, you'll get to speak your mind freely and not worry about being censored, like Facebook censors posts and comments, and also their pages and groups. And all the content creators that create videos, like on YouTube, like myself, we won't have to worry about being, demonetized, or our videos being shadow banned, or our channels as a whole being shadow banned. And there's so many channels out there, guys, that were growing with leaps and bounds. And then 2-3 years ago, this shadow banning process started kicking in, and YouTube started just encroaching on all of these ideological forms of censorship, where if they don't like what you're talking about scientifically, medically, politically, or religiously, they basically start shadow banning your channel, limiting the reach and exposure that other people who are not part of your audience can see your channel. And even people that are a part of your audience, people that already subscribe to you, people are getting unsubscribed from channels, which is crazy. I just saw a channel today that I've been subscribed to since 2015, and I was unsubscribed. So there was, and oh, by the way, he happens to be someone that disagrees with the mainstream scientific opinion on things, and he has his own opinion and tries to create his own proofs for showing true science, true observational science. But yet that's an unpopular thing in the YouTube sphere, so they've censored him. Lighthouse will not be doing any of that. You can just, if people like what you have to say, you're going to gain followers and subscribers. If you're putting out quality content, you'll gain you'll gain followers and subscribers. It's very simple. But we won't be injecting or trying to steer the course of mass thought and political narrative as some of these other big tech companies are doing. So pray for us if that's something that you are attracted to, if you are attracted to a free speech platform, and if you're someone that sells products like on Etsy or eBay or Amazon, you're gonna love our actual product platform. And if you're someone that creates contents like on video or DLive or BitChute or Brighteon, you're gonna love our video platform because it's all integrated. So you have a free social media suite integrated with the free video channel and a free marketplace, and it's gonna be amazing, guys. It is amazing. I'm watching it being developed for the last 9-10 months. It is amazing. So look for it. It's coming soon, and we'll be announcing official launch date soon. So I really appreciate everyone that already has told us and written us emails and letters saying they support us and are praying for us, because we definitely need that, because we're going up against some pretty big competition. So don't worry about it. I keep myself prayed up. I'm not really worried about it. I metaphorically consider, my ongoing prayers like my 5 smooth stones, and I'm ready to swing if I need to. So we're just charging forward, and we're gonna release this thing soon and see how the public reacts to it. So thank you guys all for your prayers as well. Who's already doing this over here? What do you guys? Oh, Jubion Kenobi. Yeah, thank you, brother. Dropping super chats already, man. I appreciate you. Guys, if you hear me struggling tonight, I don't know what's going on with my nose. We have a lot of wildfires in this area that I live here in the West, in the North Colorado, Southern Wyoming area. There's a lot of wildfires up in the mountains, and so the smoke has just been really bad. I think it's messing with my nose and my sinuses and everything. And so hopefully I sound okay, but I really appreciate you guys being here, support me, and joining me for these crazy podcasts where we talk about crazy concepts. And tonight, we are going to be talking about a crazy concept that the world wants to ignore, yet it's kind of like a weird Jekyll and Hyde situation with modern academia, where part of them want to act like ancient history never happened, because those are the Marxist ideologues, right? Those are the guys that are completely okay with ignoring all archaeology and all anthropology and just saying, oh, yeah. I mean, even though the Bible basically lays out history as archaeologists have been uncovering things in some points of investigation, it has literally led archaeologists to dig in the right spot to find things that absolutely confirm and validate the history that's within the Bible. So there's this Jekyll and Hyde mentality in academia, where some of those in those certain fields of science and discovery, they want to ignore ancient manuscripts from other countries, specifically from ancient Israel, because they obviously don't like the theology that's mixed in with the history within the Bible. And there's this huge debate. If you guys have never seen how they actually try to count history with the timeline, there's an incredible documentary called Patterns of Evidence, and they actually go over the big debate with how historians place the timeline of events and why they try to offset that timeline according to Egyptian events in order to discount and discredit the Bible. But this British PhD historian, he actually walks through the proper chain of events with archaeological proof to show you where they are off on the Egyptian timeline and how the Bible would be 100% venerated. It's called Patterns of Evidence. If you guys haven't seen it, it's worth a watch. It's really, really good. So, but the point of that is, guys, the point of all that is that this Jekyll and Hyde idea, there are archaeologists out there that find stuff and they say, yeah, this lines up with what the Bible says. But they don't like the theology in the Bible, so their voices are not promoted. Then you've got all this this other side of archaeology that has been a specific narrative, a specific shift over the past 15 to 20 years. Any and all archaeology found pushes into an evolutionary mentality. And then now it's going into an actual what's called panspermia ideology, where they are trying to, the conclusions they draw from the things they dig up out of the dirt goes to support a theory. The big overarching theory is called panspermia, that life on Earth was seeded by aliens from other planets. And this falls into the evolutionary narrative, okay? And so this idea of panspermia is something that is basically, it's just a new modern version of what ancient Chaldean and Babylonian creation tales talked about the gods who came to Earth and made mankind better, because mankind wasn't mankind when the gods came to Earth. They were basically just monkeys, and they enhanced the monkeys to make them better, to be workers for the gods. So this is the Babylonian creation tales and myths. So modern archaeology, or this subset of modern archaeology that's getting a lot of attention in all forms of brainwashing that we call TV, they're pushing that narrative for the past 15, 20 years. Because many people suspect it's culminating, or it's leading to the actual alien invasion narrative that's coming in the future. To say that the gods have returned, right? So there's a strange dishonesty within the archaeological and anthropological fields, where some of them will actually stick to their guns with what they're finding and how it lines up with biblical history, because the Bible is full of history everywhere, names, dates, times, places. And then there's another group within those fields that try to conclude and point everything to this idea of panspermia, evolutionary panspermia specifically. So it's just crazy. Yeah, you're right, Paul Levi. Smash your TV, guys. It's just the mainstream programming. It's nothing but trying to indoctrinate you to a specific narrative. And what most people cannot seem to bring themselves to ask is, could the things I'm watching on the news and coming out of academia, these quote unquote scientific studies and findings, could they actually be slanted in a specific narrative to push a certain idea? I mean, that's the kind of the most basic form that everyone has to ask themselves, to think, maybe there is an agenda. Maybe there is actually a narrative that they're trying to push by what they show you that's found, or what they lie about as far as the conclusions of how it was found. There's famous, Kent Hovind actually is pretty famous for showing with evolutionary, quote unquote, evolutionary findings from anthropology, how they had lied to actually try to prove an evolutionary narrative. So it's just, there's a lot of dishonesty out there, guys. So we just want to leavenly try to get people to wake up. So part of that is knowing a good history, because basically what a lot of people conclude is that we're dealing with ancient Babylon in a modern form that is sprinkled out into all the nations. And ancient Babylon was not just the word Babel means confusion, but the whole idea was that it was taking the different peoples and trying to make them one under one ideology and one form of religion. So most people who take a little bit deeper look than the front page of a magazine, and they take a little bit deeper look into these ideas, they easily conclude that there is an overarching narrative for us to get back to what we're about to study and read tonight from ancient Babylon. Now, this is why I said this is part one. We're just going to look at some of the foundational underpinnings of the Tower of Babel in the city and everything involved. But guys, there's so much more to this topic. It truly is a huge and grandiose topic. So the ancient story is that there's a tower that they were trying to build to heaven. We're going to read the actual text from Genesis and Jubilees as well. But this whole concept was, a lot of people seem to glaze over and miss that there was not just a tower, okay? There was a city and a tower that was built in the plains of Shinar. The exact location we're going to read about here in a little bit, as far as what some people in history thought about the exact location, but it's still kind of up for debate. But the big thing that I want to stress tonight, guys, is there's a city and a tower. There's a reason why that Genesis 11 and Jubilees goes into this. It's not just the tower itself. Now, this particular artist depiction tries to show what looks like a bunch of, ancient city structures built around the tower itself, as if the city itself is the tower, but no, it's not. It's two different things. I chose this picture because of the beautiful landscape around it, just to kind of show you a stark contrast to its potential height compared to the mountains around it. So there's a city and a tower. Sean M, no, Pangea is a situation where Pangea, you can't have Pangea. the way most Pangea is described is off a heliocentric ball Earth narrative that tries to say that I'm going to give you the shortcut, okay, without going into all great detail. Pangea basically tries to say that the continents themselves are floating lily pads, and that at one point those lily pads were all touching in together. But that is not at all what we know the Earth to be when we actually dig and we realize there's a floor to the ocean. The ocean doesn't run underneath the continents. The continents come up out of the ocean. You see what I'm saying? So it's one solid world, and there's water sitting on it. The water collects in reservoirs that we call oceans between the land masses that protrude above the water. Whereas Pangea tries to push a narrative that all the continents were once connected and then they were divided up, because it's like they were like lily pads in a pond, and then they were divided up and the water ran all between the lily pads. But that's not at all what's going on. And words in red, I know that's what he's referring to. We're going to get to Peleg in a minute, and we're going to kind of break it down as we go through the texts and talk about why people try to conclude that really poor, unscientific concept of Pangea to Peleg, meaning that Earth was divided in his days. So we're going to review that towards the end. So stick with us. All right, guys. So look here. Sitting at tower. This is the thing I want you to remember. This is what's important to remember. It's not just simply a tower. There was more to it. Jubilees chapter 10, 18 to 21. And in the 3 and 30th Jubilee, in the first year in the second week, Peleg took himself a wife whose name was Lomna, the daughter of Shinar. She bare him a son in the 4th year of this week. And he called his name Ru, for he said, Behold, the children of men have become evil through the wicked purpose of building for themselves a city and a tower in the land of Shinar. For they departed from the land of Ararat eastward to Shinar. For in his days they built the city and the tower, saying, Go to, let us ascend thereby into heaven. I'm going to pause real quick, guys. The reason why is because a lot of people kind of miss this, but if you're wondering why they would be departing from the land of Ararat and going eastward to Shinar, well, that's because the land of Ararat, where the boat, rested after the flood. And so therefore you have Noah and his 3 boys, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their children start populating and spreading out. So this is why we get the genealogical timelines in Genesis 10, Genesis 11. We're going to go over some of that in just a minute. But this is why they're going eastward from the mountains of Ararat. So for all of you guys out there trying to find the resting place of Noah's Ark, this gives you a little bit of a clue, at least directionally, where they came from. So their purpose to go toward the land of Shinar, for they departed from the land of Ararat eastward to Shinar, for in his days, that's in Ru's days, they began to build, for in his days they built the city and the tower, saying, Go to and let us ascend thereby into heaven. Well, the idea of heaven, with the firmament, guys, what's the word heaven mean? The word heaven, Genesis 1:6-8, the word heaven is the name that was given to the structure called the firmament, the domed firmament that was created on day 2. Okay, this is what it's described in Amos 9:6 and a whole bunch of other passages in Scripture. This was the structure, the building materials called firmament. The name given to the building was called heaven. So there's multiple layers, as described in Scripture, approximately 7 layers of firmament, and the whole structure from above the ground and all the way up is called the realm of heaven. There's the open space where the birds fly below the firmament structure over the earth. That's called the open firmament, as in Genesis 1:20, where the birds fly, because there's space between the actual structures of the firmament. But then everything above that and all the layers above that is considered the kingdom of heaven, the realm of heaven, the place above. We're actually going to be reading about that from some ancient rabbis in the past who had commentary on the Tower of Babel. and some of the motivations of what's going on there, just like we're reading here. And they actually describe the upper realm above compared to the realm down below where we live. So let's get back to it real quick. Jubilees 10. And they begin to build because they wanted to ascend into heaven. They begin to build. And in the 4th week, they made brick with fire, and the brick served them for stone. And the clay with which they cemented them together was asphalt, which comes out of the sea and out of the fountains of water in the land of Shinar. They built it. 40 years were they building it. Its breadth was 203 bricks, and the height of a brick was a third of one. Its height amounted to 5,433 cubits and 2 palms. And the extent of one wall was 13 stades, and the other was 30 stades. So this is, I don't know if you guys have ever tried to do the comparisons here. There's different ideas. Most people try to figure out immediately how tall it was. That seems to be the first idea, is that people try to figure out, how big was this thing? But I think what's interesting is that its breadth was 203 bricks. And this is potentially, unfortunately, we don't have the size of the brick. I mean, this is the most description we have was in the book of Jubilees. Between Genesis and any other accounts, we actually get, engineering descriptions, if you will. But all it describes as far as the brick is that the height of a brick was the third of one, which is basically telling us like only one part of its dimension about how big these bricks were, but we don't actually get the full description of how big these bricks really were. But guys, I promise you, these are not bricks. The word brick here is not meaning like your brick on your home, like those red bricks that are the size of your hand or a little bigger. We're not talking like that. We're talking like the bricks you see in ancient engineering, right? These massive stones that they would actually be able to make. So there's much, it's just, don't let the common use of our word brick make you think that it's literally an Acme brick that you can go down and get at, some kind of lumber hardware store. It's not that type of brick. Okay. So the point is this is a massive structure, and it says its height's 5,433 cubits. Well, most of you may have heard me say this in the past, but supposedly there's 2 different measurements of cubit. The original Hebrew cubit, or mostly the cubit most accepted in the Mediterranean area, was 18 inches. But then supposedly the Egyptians had what they called a royal cubit, which is 25 inches. But for purposes of scale tonight, as we go through and look at how possibly tall this was, we're just going to be looking at the traditional accepted 18-inch cubit. Okay. So if we actually do some math as far as how big is a 5,433 cubits, what does that actually compare to in our, with our calculations today? So basically you're looking at 8,150 feet. 8,150 feet would be translated or calculated from 5,433 cubits. Okay. So let's look at, and keep that in mind because we're going to look at some comparisons here in a minute. Here's the rest of Jubilees 10, 23 to 25. And the Lord our God said to us, behold, they are one people, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be withholden from them. So go to and let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech, that they may be dispersed into cities and nations, and one purpose will no longer abide with them till the day of judgment. And the Lord descended, and we descended with him, to see the city and the tower which the children of men had built. And I'm going to stop real quick right here, guys. Did anyone notice what I just read? I'm going to read it again, okay? It says, go to, let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech, that they may be dispersed into cities and nations, and one purpose will no longer abide with them till the day of judgment. This is the day of the Lord, guys. No one purpose will no longer abide with them till the day of judgment. Guys, this is saying that they had one purpose at this point. God and the angels came down to disperse them through a confounding of languages, so they no longer had one purpose, but yet on the day of judgment, they will have one purpose again. You guys remember Revelation 16? Kings of the earth, the 3 demons that are likened unto frogs, they go out of the mouths of the, I think it's the second beast, and they go out to gather the kings of the earth that they may make war against the Lamb. So this is the only other time that they would have one purpose, is on the day or leading up to the return of Yeshua, the second coming. There's a prophecy built in right here. We don't get this particular part in Genesis 11. It's really sad. Jasper, Hebrews 12 tells us it was Jubilees chapter 12 tells us the original language was Hebrew. And in fact, it actually tells you that Abraham was taught it by an angel, basically, miraculously. He was taught it because he was needing to read the books of his fathers Noah and Enoch and Shem in order to, after he left his father Terah and was trying to learn the ways of Yahweh, and he actually had a conversion moment. He miraculously was taught Hebrew, so he could read the writings of Enoch and Shem and Noah, and therefore he could learn what he was supposed to become the righteous man that we know Abraham to be. So they say it was originally Hebrew, is the claim of Jubilees. So check this out, man. This is, yes, thank you, David Shear. These three evil spirits that come out. Yeah, it's not just the second beast, I guess. It's out both the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. So all three of the bad guys. These three demons go out to gather the kings of the earth for war, and that's a huge problem. But this is prophesied in Jubilees 10. Just think about that. You guys, we've talked about the day of the Lord emphatically on this channel. Ken Heidelbrecht from Hanging on His Words, he and I did an entire 20-episode show called The Road to Rescue on a buddy's channel. And we have several of those episodes still up on my channel. If you go to the playlist, you can go to Road to Rescue playlists, and you can see those. But we talk about the day of the Lord emphatically. There's tons and tons of prophecy about the day of the Lord. Here's just another one. Just slipped right in here to the story of the Tower of Babel. Father knows the end from the beginning. He knows what's going to happen. So with this concept in mind, it says, the Lord descended, and we descended with him to see the city and the tower with which the children of men had built. And he confounded their language. They no longer understood one another's speech. They ceased then to build the city and the tower. For this reason, the whole land of Shinar is called Babel, because the Lord did there confound all the language of the children of men. And from there, they were dispersed into their cities, each according to his language and his nation. How interesting. Now, if you read the book of Jubilees, you'll see that previously in chapters 8 and 9, Noah, he already just, gives an allotment of all the different lands to his children and grandchildren and where they should go out and flourish and spread out and populate. Part of the rebellion of the story of the Tower of Babel was they refused to do that. In fact, they all wanted to come together. They didn't want to go out and be dispersed. They wanted to come together and actually build a tower to heaven and make an authority for themselves. Guys, I cannot express this enough. I talk about this a lot, and those of you who have been watching me for a few years, I really appreciate your patience, but there's a lot of new people that come on, and they still have a lot of traditional misunderstanding from what, all the misconceptions we were taught in mainstream churches. But when it goes in that says, let me go back to this one right here. All right, so it says they descended into heaven. This is the Jubilees 10 account. Let me go to the Genesis 11 account where it says they desired to make a name for themselves. So Genesis 11, 1 through 5. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. It came about as they journeyed east. They found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they used bricks for stone, and they used tar for mortar. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let us make for ourselves a name." Guys, this is what I was getting at. The word name is literally the word for authority in Hebrew and in the Greek in the New Testament. So this is not just talking about they didn't want to to make yourself a name means that you wanted to be your own authority. So this is definitely telling you the traditional idea that people have of, well, they're rebelling against God. 100% they're rebelling against God. Yeah. They're trying to build a tower to heaven so they can make themselves the authority because they know God was the authority and they didn't want that. So why would you need to go see the guy who has authority over you? Because you don't want him to have authority over you anymore. So this is why you have a lot of rabbis that suspect from the past that they were trying to make war with God. This is why they're trying to get to heaven. So let's slow down and break down that language. Why would they possibly think they can actually go see God? Because they know what Genesis 1 describes. They all believe it. They're living under a firmament, and above that firmament is the Creator. What's your natural thought process? If you don't want that person to be in charge of you anymore, you got to go see him and get him out of the way. You want to ascend to heaven and make a name for yourself and make yourself an authority over yourself, which means you got to go take the authority out that's over you, which is why they're climbing up, not climbing down. They're not going to the far extents of the earth to find somebody that's ruling over them from somewhere else. They know where he is. They know who he is. And they know that they have to go up, literally up. This isn't about space and star portals and gateways to other dimensions. This is literally up, down, left, right. BABA, start, start. This is literally up, down, left, right, guys. You have to go up to get through the firmament to actually take out the person over in authority over you. So this is the general premise. Oh, thank you, official Mike Maranatha. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you for everything I learned from every video, and I pray your reach explodes and that I used to bring a sheep back. Yeah, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you. Amen. Hey, here's the good part, man. Even if my particular reach doesn't explode, it doesn't matter, because these videos, you guys can share them. You know what I'm saying? You can share them independently on all your socials and still reach people far greater than I ever could with a subscriber count on YouTube. So yeah, I try to stay encouraged. I don't let YouTube, our very slow growth pace of censorship they have us on here. As you guys know, that I've uploaded videos like these podcasts. Like I have to create a thumbnail for the podcast before I upload the start time of when I'm going to do these podcasts. And so, think about what I'm saying, right? So I basically, when you guys get a notification, then I'm going to do a podcast at 9 o'clock or 9:30 or whatever. That's my time. I think it's, different for people across the country, but I have to go into my Streamlabs studio, and I have to make that so that it can then be told to YouTube, that's when I'm going to start this live broadcast. So then YouTube takes my thumbnail and makes an announcement with an actual video page where you guys come on and you can wait in the chat a few minutes earlier before we start, or you can, see that, I'm going to start at 9 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So that whole process has to be initiated. No content has actually been done yet. No content. Like, I haven't started the actual broadcast. I haven't said anything through the mic. And sometimes even just creating that initial announcement that I'm going to start, in an hour, a podcast, YouTube will actually demonetize the video. Nothing's even been said yet, and they're demonetizing the video. I only get to see it on my back end, in my studio. So it's hilarious, guys, the censorship that's out there. It's truly hilarious. So yeah, I really appreciate official Mike. I really appreciate you for your super chat and your well wishes. But that's how we get around that type of censorship, is everyone watching. If you think what I'm talking about is quality, and you think that the way I'm putting these things together is helpful, you got to share it with other people in your socials or email or however you can. So, because I don't think YouTube wants me to actually grow anymore. That's why I was talking about earlier about all these channels that you saw 4 or 5 years ago that were just growing greatly, skyrocketing to, like our buddy over at Parable of the Vineyard, Adam Fink, he was growing, man. I mean, just in the 3 years I've known him, he went from 40,000 subscribers, and then he went to 100,000 subscribers, and then he got super censored. And then for an entire year, he hovered at 100,000 subscribers. And then finally, they've taken the cap back off of him, and he's grown another 29,000 subscribers in just like the last 4 or 5 months. But the point is that the way they just put the kibosh on him for an entire year and he wasn't growing at all is ludicrous. Like that is against all the all the data that shows he had a steady growth rate because his content was positive and people liked it and they were sharing it and it was reaching people. So they were just showing him like what they can do to actually squash you anytime they want. And there's other channels out there like that. There's some channels that grew, like I know another channel that grew to 150,000 subscribers. In 2017, they got censored. They haven't grown any at all since. And they're still putting out amazing content all the time. They just, yeah, it's suppression, censorship. So I appreciate you guys. So guys, look, Genesis 11, this whole concept here, I'm going to finish reading to the very end. Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. Verses 6-9, the Lord said, behold, they are one people. They all have the same language. This is what they begin to do. Now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore, its name was called Babel. So I'm kind of drawing that out a little bit, guys, because it doesn't say they stopped building the tower. Yes, they did. The tower itself is destroyed. We're going to, we all know that. But the point is, there's both things. There's a city and a tower. Therefore, its name was called Babel, because the Lord confounded the language of the whole earth. And from there, the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth. So this is what some people claim is the remnants of the Tower of Babel in the area of Iraq, modern-day Iraq, which has been ancient Babylon area in the plains of Shinar. It's a huge, broad, flat piece of land and area. So I don't know if this is truly the remains or it was some other ziggurat. It's really hard to tell, to be honest with you. But this is what some people claim. This is an artistic rendition of the city and the tower. So I wanted you to give the proper perspective, because this is going to matter, guys. I want you to have the proper perspective of what the scriptures have been saying this whole time. It's not just a big tower. This was an entire metropolis, a city and a tower, because we're going to read about a little bit later that Nebuchadnezzar, he actually tried to rebuild it. And during his day, which was hundreds and hundreds of years later, but he rebuilt it to this tune of 60 miles approximately, with these massive stone walls that surrounded much of the city, or the main part of the city, that they were literally walls so thick they could have chariot races 3 deep on the tops of the walls. That's how thick these walls were. And it was, considered impregnable. It was considered, something that you couldn't actually overcome. But the point is, all this stuff they're doing is a counterfeit. And this is something I'm going to keep talking about throughout every part of this series. All the stuff that they're doing is just the people that organized the building of the city and the tower were the descendants of Noah. A few generations down, not even that many generations. They know the story of heaven. They know the story of creation. They know they lived in a firmament enclosed cosmology. They know the Garden of Eden used to be on the ground before the flood, and that it was retracted into heaven. They know the story. They're building their own version. They don't want the city of heaven that's destined to come down, like Enoch talks about. They don't want that concept. They want their own authority over themselves. They think they can build their own version of the kingdom to come. One that literally connects the firmament with the ground. And as a result, you need a city and a tower. And you also, in their minds, need to be their own authority, because they know this is not what God plans or intends. Not just morally, according to their moral behaviors, but because of the actual storyline of Scripture. Okay? So, yeah, exactly, Official Mike. That's what I'm getting at, is they think that the Tower of Babel that they're trying to build, and we're going to go back to the measurements here in just a minute, because it actually breaks down to be, what was it, 8,150 feet. For those of you who may know, that's, not quite 2 miles, like 1.5 miles, 1.65 miles high. And so we're going to be looking at that in comparison with other things in just a minute. But yeah, you're right. It's just a poor counterfeit, an imposter of the kingdom of God that's promised to us by God. So guys, if we keep going, this is another artistic rendition of possibly what the tower looked like. And you can see at the very bottom, there's semblances of what a city might be, but the mountains in the background are not accurate to to the plane of Shinar, but that's not the point. Jubilees chapter 10. Okay, so this is what we read initially. This is the actual specific dimensions: 5,433 cubits and 2 palms. Guys, this is the Empire State Building. Anybody know how tall this is? The Empire State Building in New York City. Guys, this is I think, 101 stories. They built this in 1 year. 1,454 feet tall. Jubilees claims the Tower of Babel, at its most conservative estimate, was 8,150 feet tall. This is the Empire State Building. This is a minuscule. This is 1/8, not even like 1/7 the size. Guys, this is one of the tallest buildings in the world. This is the Burj Khalifa. That's the beautiful little artistic photo of Dubai covered in clouds. Did you guys know the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, they took 5 years to build, and it's 2,722 feet tall. Jubilees claims Tower of Babel was 8,150 feet tall. Burj Khalifa is a baby compared to supposedly what the Tower of Babel was. Here in Tokyo, we have the Tokyo Sky Tree, a new building that went up in 2010. It took them 4 years to build it. It's 2,080 feet tall. It's the Tokyo Sky Tree. Book of Jubilees claims the Tower of Babel is 8,150 feet tall. So this is a fourth of the height of the Tower of Babel. The Dubai Creek Tower, this is still under construction. It's supposed to be completed in 2021. And once completed, if it completes in 2021, it will only have taken them 5 years to build. And it's going to be taller than the Burj Khalifa. It's actually in the same city. It's across the city, on the other end of the city, where they're building. It's I think it's called the Arabia City. It's like we're going to go over the size of Dubai here in just a minute as well. But this is in the same city of Dubai, where they have all these mega tower structures. But this is it's projected to be even bigger once it's completed next year, bigger than the Burj Khalifa. It's going to have taken them 5 years to build. 4,413 feet tall. Guys, that is, look how big, much bigger it is than the Burj Khalifa. So it's almost 2,000 feet taller than the Burj Khalifa. Massive, massive buildings that we're getting into, mega structures and feats of engineering in our day. In our day, right? This is the actual city of Dubai itself. And I wanted to cover this because I want you guys to have some scope and some scale of what we just read from Jubilees and Genesis. If it took them 43 years to build the city and the tower, 43 years. Guys, we just looked at these massive buildings that they're putting up in 1 to 5 years. And 43 years? They took them 43 years to build a city and a tower. I think that's plenty of time to build an incredible base to an incredibly large tower. So here's the city of Dubai itself in 1991 versus modern day, 2017, 2020. If you look at the picture on the left, it was a barren field, basically. There was a city there. It had some large apartment complexes and tower and 30, 40-story buildings, but it was nothing like what it is today. It's now one of the biggest cities in the world. And it's one of the most advanced and wealthy cities in the world in literally less than 30 years. In fact, the bulk of the city was actually put up in 15 years, and now they continue to build huge skyscrapers every year. In fact, at one point I heard all the big cranes that they use, the big, large cranes that you see building skyscrapers, half of all the cranes in existence in the world are in Dubai, because they're constantly building these massive structures all over the place and building the city super tall. Guys, this is just a glimpse of part of Dubai with the Burj Khalifa in the background. This is kind of a sidescape of the skyline of part of Dubai. It's bigger than this. Dan Perez, the Sphinx is like, 3 stories tall, maybe. It's super small. not very big. So as you can see, the Burj Khalifa in the far left-hand side of this skyline photo of Dubai. And there's a nice ball-top tower. We'll talk about that in future episodes. And so this is a massive city that they've put together. Here's just a glimpse of part of the city. You can't even see the Burj Khalifa or the Dubai Creek Tower in this because this is just part of the city that they've been building over there since, in 20, 25 years, they've put up an entire mega city. And there's another beautiful landscape photo of part of the city as well. And if you look very far in the distance, you can see where they're building Arabia City as well, which is going to be just as big as this. It's already under construction. It's amazing, guys. So 43 years. These guys have built this in 25 approximately in modern techniques with massive towers. Look at the city. Do you guys remember me talking about... Let me put this on screen because this is just to bring us back to some scripture real quick. I always try to stay as close to concepts in scripture as possible, but I'll put this on screen real quick. Isaiah chapter 30. You guys ready? This isn't a prophecy about the end of days. On every lofty mountain, on every high hill, there will be streams running with water on the day of the great slaughter when the towers fall. When the towers fall, guys, this is can be paralleled with some of the destruction going on. And it's talking about Zion. The inhabitants of Jerusalem will be blessed because the Lord is going to come down and, with it, his lips are filled with fire and indignation like it's consuming fire. This is day of the Lord talk, right? It's the day of a massive, massive earthquake that happens, that all the cities of the earth are destroyed. So this is there where flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder. There was a great earthquake such as there has never been since man came to be upon the earth. So great an earthquake was it, and so mighty. It goes on to say, and the great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. Babylon the Great was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of his fierce wrath. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. How crazy is that? The cities of the nations fell. All these things are going to fall, guys. Beautiful, beautiful city, modern architecture. But this is baby stuff compared to what the ancients are claiming about the Tower of Babel. Here's an artistic rendition of the Titans of old of Greek mythology, as well as the city and the Tower of Babel being constructed, reaching up to heaven. The reason why there's a couple of component pieces of this particular artwork that someone put together, as far as the actual, light that's shooting out from the top of the tower, I don't think that was a part of it, but I think it's very fitting that they're putting up, Nephilim Titans all around it, as far as artwork that's carved out of the hills, as well as you can see in the top and the background, there's things floating in the sky. And we're going to talk about that in future episodes. We're going to talk about the ancient technology of the ancient past and what we do see from archaeological records and from history and from manuscripts of what possibly the technological capabilities of ancient Babylon had, because it matters. It all matters. It's all a part of the story. We just have to kind of go from a bunch of sources to make sure we can have a well-rounded context to the story. And so many of the sources we try to stay with are biblical-based sources, but we are going to look at history. We are going to look at manuscripts. We are going to look at archaeology. We're going to look at the narrative that other nations talked about in pertaining to the Tower of Babel, because remember, all their ancestors were once a part of the group that was coming together in one purpose and in one language under one leader to build this tower to heaven. We're going to talk about that, that leader as well. So there's a lot to this. Why I said it has to be more than one part. I can't cover everything in one podcast, but so guys, let's look at some discussion here from ancient rabbis. Now, I don't always quote ancient rabbis for their theology because, there's so much liberality, liberties. I'm saying the wrong word. There's so many liberties that they are taking with some of their theology from specific rabbis of the past. But that doesn't say that every single person that considered himself a rabbi was, just an outright liar. Definitely they had their own slants from their own legends and traditions. Okay. So this is where I want everyone to take this with a grain of salt. But again, we're gonna look at what the ancient world thought when it came to this topic of the Tower of Babel. Okay, and we're going to see if any of this either lines up with what we've read from Jubilees and Genesis, or maybe it doesn't, and we'll just let it fall away. So this is from a gentleman that from quoted in the Mishpatim 20, Rabbi Wise, and it says the Midrashim give different accounts of the real cause for building the Tower of Babel and the intentions of its builders. So this is right off the bat, I would say, well, that seems a little bit silly because we have the same intentions stated to us in Genesis and Jubilees. It says it was regarded even in the Tanite tradition as a rebellion against God. Okay, that lines up with Genesis, Jubilees, makes sense. And the later Midrash records that the builders of the tower, called the generation of secession in the Jewish sources, said he, that's being God, this is them quoting their reasoning for the Tower of Babel being built, he has no right to choose the upper world for himself. You guys remember what I talked about? How they all understood what Genesis 1 and Jubilees 2 teaches about where we were created and what it's designed as. Father lives above, and it's an entire world, guys. It's an entire, like the book of Enoch describes, there's water and trees and land and mountains and beautiful trees. And it's an entire world. So this is the supposed, complaints of the people that came together to build the Tower of Babel, that he, God, has no right to choose the upper world for himself and to leave the lower world to us. Therefore, we will build us a tower with an idol on the top holding a sword so that it may appear as if intended to war with God. The building of the tower was meant to bid defiance not only to God, but also to Abraham, who exhorted the builders to reverence. Therefore, the Bible speaks of the one speech, which is interpreted as signifying speech against the one against God, and against his one only follower. So this is claiming that Abraham was his only follower at the time. I don't know if I truly agree with that, because we do see Abraham go to meet the Melchizedek, who was the priest of the Most High God. And he, in Jubilees, tells us that even he, the Melchizedek, had other priests that he was training. So I don't know if I agree with everything in that interpretation, but I think it's very interesting that they're actually trying to say that the people that built the tower were actually not just in defiance against God himself, but also against Abraham. What's a consistent pattern, guys, that we've seen? Let me pull this back up for us, that we've seen in Scripture when it comes to people that are in defiance against God, and also the prophets sent by God. If we look in Genesis chapter 20, verse 7, Abimelech is speaking about Abraham. And he says, now therefore restore the man's wife, for he, Abraham, is a prophet. And he will pray for you and you will live. Guys, they knew Abraham was a prophet. But Abraham is a story that's told to us in Jubilees 12, onward to, I think, chapter 23, till he dies. And in Jubilees, it explains to us where he came from. How did he become a prophet in Genesis 20? There's a process that leads to that. You don't just wake up one day and you're a prophet. And this is because of the limited information we have in Genesis chapter 12, people think, he's 75 years old. God called him out of Haran. Go thee from Chaldea, take your people with you, get out of here. And therefore Abraham believed, Romans 4 talks about, therefore it's credited him as righteousness. So we got all this narrative that we've been taught about Abraham, but yet that's just from the limited information in Genesis. Jubilees goes into greater depth to how, when he was actually a boy at 14 years old, he realizes idol worship is pointless. And his father is an idol maker and one of the chiefs of the land. And so therefore he has to rebel against that whole idea. He actually has, if you read Jubilees 12, I don't have time to go into it tonight, but if you read all of Jubilees 12, it goes into explain in great depth how Abraham had to try to talk with his father about, why are you doing this idol making? We know they're not gods. There's no life in them. And Terah, his father, actually admits to him, I know, but if we don't, the people will kill us. That sound familiar? So instead of men standing up to be the brave men that they need to be in their generation, they're cowering until Abraham shows up. And he's willing to go against the grain. He's willing to defy Babylon, to actually step up and do what's righteous and follow Yahweh. So, very interesting concepts here put forward. Jubilees chapter 8. Let's jump into some of this back history of Abraham leading up to his generation and what's going on. Jubilees chapter 8, verse 6 through 7. In the 4th year, he was born. This is the guy named Kenan. And Shelah grew up and took to himself a wife, and her name was Maok, the daughter of Kesed, his father's brother. And in 130th Jubilee of the 5th week in the 1st year thereof, she bare him a son in the 5th year thereof, and called his name Eber. You guys all recognize Eber, right? He took unto himself a wife, and her name was Azarad, the daughter of Nimrod. And guys, that's the Greek transliterated word in Jubilees for the name Nimrod. So hopefully it's kind of getting you into, a contextual line, a contextual understanding of what we're going to, this whole atmosphere, this whole generational time frame of when this is taking place. And this is in the 32nd Jubilee in the 7th week in the 3rd year thereof. So guys, in case you didn't know, we all heard the word Eber, right? Descendant of Shem, Eber. His daughter, Eber married the daughter of Nimrod. Eber, guys, married Nimrod's daughter. You guys think that was a good thing or a bad thing? Let's look at Genesis 10. Who's this Nimrod guy? Genesis 10, 9 through 14. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel. What are we talking about? Babylon. And Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. From that land he went forth into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, and Calah, and Rezin. Between Nineveh and Calah, that is the great city. Rezin is called the great city. Mizraim became the father of Ludim, and Anamim, and Lehabim, and Naphtuim, and Pathrusim, and Calsuim, which came from the Philistines, and the Caphtorim. So here is Nimrod introducing us that he's not just a mighty hunter before the Lord. He's a mighty hunter before the Lord is his slogan that was said of him. But he had kingdoms and multiple cities that he reigned over. He is also considered the one that literally was. Josephus writes about Nimrod saying that he was the king of Babylon, and that he basically incrementally encouraged people to have that complaint that we read earlier, that they wanted a name for themselves. They wanted to ascend to heaven and take over God, because he incrementally convinced them basically over time that they were, that God was unfair, basically. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the quote in front of me, but that's the idea. Genesis 11. Let's look at the time. Let's look at the actual, this is Genesis 11. This isn't the actual verses, but I just gave you a short breakdown for the sake of time. Shem was born, son of Noah. Arphaxad came from him. If you have to look in Jubilees in the Greek Septuagint to find this guy who's missing in the Masoretic, this is this Kenan guy, the Canaan. All right. Then he is the father of Shelah, and then Eber, and then Peleg, and then Ru, and then Serug, and then Nahor, and Terah, and then Abraham. So what did we read from Jubilees 8, 6, and 7 a minute ago? We had this guy, Shelah, birthed Eber. And Eber married the daughter of Nimrod. You guys think that was a good thing or a bad thing? Very bad thing. Very bad thing, guys. So in the story of Jubilees chapter 8, this guy Kenan was being taught writings by Arphaxad. That means someone had to teach Arphaxad. That's going to be Shem. Shem was taught by whom? That would be Noah. Noah was taught by Methuselah, or Lamech to Methuselah to Enoch. See how this goes back? This is why in the book of Jubilees, chapter 12, and other chapters, I think it's also in chapter 21, Abraham had the books of Enoch and Noah in his possession. It's crazy. But this is how Abraham is at the bottom of this lineage, guys, because Shem is getting this priesthood passed down to him from Noah, that's why you would learn writings. That's what that term means, that you would learn writings. So this is why in Genesis 11, we're even getting this lineage for us. There's a whole bunch of other kids birthed in Genesis 10, but it focuses on this particular lineage. A lot of people like to say, oh, it's only because it's leading to Christ. That could be part of it for sure. Yes, there's some component pieces that, you look at the genealogies and it can lead back all the way back to Shem. But the point is, these guys specifically, in the context of their day and what's going on in Genesis 10 and 11, is this massive concept of one world system that's being put into place where they're building a city and a tower, and all the people that are alive during those days are actually going in on this. They're actually deceived to go in on this grand plan to try to actually get through the firmament, to get to the realm where the Father and the angels live, and somehow try to take over, which is craziness. So as a result of this, I mean, I say it's crazy because it's like utter disrespect for, who God is. And to think that the hubris to think that you could actually defeat him when he created you, like that, just logically, just from the get-go, from the jump, that makes no sense. You can't literally overcome, outsmart, or overpower the guy who created you. It's logical inconsistency, but that's what demonic deception does. So the point I have this on screen, guys, is I'm trying to show you, this is just like in Genesis 5, it's following Genesis 11, this lineage from Shem down to Abraham is following the priesthoods. So this is why Kenan, the son of Arphaxad, would be taught writings. That's why Jubilees chapter 8, 1-4 says he found the writings of the watchers that are being dried out after the flood, and he started sinning because of those writings of the watchers that he found. And the book of Enoch tells us in great depth what those watchers were teaching, all the same occultic idolatry and abortion and cannibalism and witchcraft and sorcery, all the stuff that Babylon is famous for. And here it is, a few generations. Kenan is literally the granddad of Eber. And lo and behold, Eber marries Nimrod's daughter. This is not an accident, guys. None of this is an accident. These names are here to let us know the context of this story. So therefore, you have all this is happening. That Abraham is, this is the Peleg. To answer your question, I can't remember who asked it earlier, but he's asking about Peleg. The idea of Peleg is, this is Genesis, Jubilees chapter 8 and chapter 9 and parts of chapter 10 go in and actually explain further about how during the days of Peleg, Noah actually decided amongst all these sons and grandsons, all right, guys, we're going to draw lots, and we're going to actually show you which land that you can go spread out from. Because at the beginning, they were just all kind of hanging out near the base of the mountain that the ark rested on. And they're all flourishing there, basically, sticking around Granddaddy Noah. But then he's like, all right, guys, there's a ton of earth out here. There's a ton of the plane of the earth that you guys can go out and spread out upon and have your own land and have plenty of room. Like, there's so much, And he starts dividing up huge portions of the earth to give to his sons and his grandchildren. And this is why the earth was divided up in those days during the days of Peleg. Very simple concept. Nothing to do with Pangea or evolutionary theory. So then, therefore, we get down to Terah, because if you follow the lineage, you see that it goes down to Terah. That's the father of Abraham. And this is why we see he's the chief idol maker in the kingdom of Babylon. Abraham, guys, Abraham is growing up with Babylon in the background. Abraham. You don't get that from Genesis. This guy is growing up with all this nonsense of Babylon, the city and the tower being built. That's his mentality growing up. Why are they building this? Oh, can you imagine being a 12-year-old trying to ask, why are we building this again? You're trying to get to heaven? Oh, okay. You want to do what? Okay. But didn't he create us? Okay. Okay, but you're mad because he flooded us, and you don't want to be dispersed upon the earth. You want to get up there and live where he lives? Okay. That's crazy. So you have this kid that comes along, and he's actually that kid who goes, yeah, I'm not falling for all that. And this is where, if you read Jubilees 12, it says he actually realizes, as he's doing exactly what Jubilees 8 says Kenan discovered from the watchers, he's looking to the signs of the sun and the moon and the omens of the stars. And he's like, why do I do this? I know that they're all in the hand of the Creator. Like, he's having this amazing moment where his conscience, as Romans chapter 2, verse 7 through 14 explains, that the law of God's written on every person, therefore your conscience bears witness against you, either affirming you or condemning you on the day when all your secrets will be laid bare before Jesus Christ. So he's literally having this idea where the Spirit of God is, through his conscience, is making him realize, man, this is just nonsense. Like, why are we doing this? Because the Creator controls all this stuff. Why are we trying to get through his firmament that he built over us? And by the way, how are you going to get through that water that's up there? The same water that they're all mad about that came down and flooded us before. Like, how are you going to get through all that? You guys think how interesting is it that NASA trains their spacemen, their astronauts, in a big tank of water so that they know that their astronaut suits are all waterproof? How interesting. And the Bible says there's water above the firmament before you get to the next layer, where it kind of enclosed. That's what literally the Hebrew word shomayim means. It means a covering of water. Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Miss Marcia. This is Abraham had a true awakening, and according to Jubilee 12, he was only like 14 years old. And he actually goes to his father and he's like, why are we doing this? Why are we making these idols and doing all these? These aren't actual gods. And so, but his father's just full of fear, truly full of fear. So it's very interesting. Yeah, that's Stephen Scofield, 2 weeks a year. The Book of Jubilee speaks in weeks, which is basically, a week of years is 7 years, according to the breakdown. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But guys, I just hopefully to bring some clarity, just as an introduction in part one here for you, of we're being introduced to the city and the tower, how long it possibly took them to build it. Well, I mean, 43 years is a long time, as we saw in modern times, without the entire cooperative effort of all the nations, with just contracted labor that cost billions of dollars. They built the city of Dubai in 20 to 25 years with massive skyscrapers, but yet those tallest towers and buildings aren't even half the height of the Tower of Babel. So to me, it amazes me to think that we're so vain to tell ourselves, oh man, these were ancient people, man. They were just like, they were barely just out of cave dwelling. This is what evolutionary thought has done to other Christians who struggle to take the Bible seriously, because they don't actually take the time to look and dig in. And they're dealing with this public indoctrination from public school that tells them, oh, well, man's been around for 100,000 years according to evolutionists, and 10,000 years ago we came through an ice age, and then what few humans migrated after that, and Homo pithecus, and then and all this nonsense, Neanderthal man, who then came up to Homo sapien, and then now at Homo sapien he's able to actually create fire and make a wheel, and he's getting out of the cave, and you're like, dude, on all that's nonsense. These dudes were brilliant, super smart people. And we're going to go over those facets of how ancient technology was a reality in the ancient world. And it blows me away, this mindset of self-defeating. I'm not using the word hypocritical as in the people that hold this mindset that the ancient cultures, they couldn't have been smart, but it's this weird, hypocritical, like, it's hypocritical because on one hand, they'll say the ancient Egyptians were amazing. They built all this stuff. But when you just go next door to the Hebrews, they say, oh, those were sheep herders. They didn't know anything. Those were desert wanderers, sheep herders who just penciled some stuff for people to control the people by. And you're like, but wait a minute. Moses literally had all the training of Egypt. The same people that you glorify and you say they're so amazing and smart, and look at all this amazing engineering and technology they accomplished. And yet Moses was trained in all that. But now the moment Moses writes a book, you want to claim that he's just a goat herder who's a desert wanderer, and he's not, and everything that he said is null and void because he's stupid. Like, that's that hypocritical mindset that's not connecting, that I talked about at the beginning, this idea that's taught within the realm of archaeology and anthropology in the sciences. It's taught in a Jekyll and Hyde type of way. The people that they favor, they're brilliant. The people that they don't like, because they don't like their moral teachings that associated with it, they're desert wanderer, goat herders, Bronze Age nonsense, cave dwellers. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, Sean M, the Baghdad battery, that's an old school example of something amazing. That's literally just clay, clay and a copper rod and some acidic liquid, and suddenly you've got energy, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we're gonna have other. I just want to help bring this all to, and this part one, just bring it all into a well-rounded scope, and we're gonna dig into different facets of some of these things, and then go into some other stuff that I didn't talk about tonight, just didn't have time. But I just wanted you guys to all remember this is all happening. The beginnings of the kingdom of Babylon is all taking place in the same atmosphere where you've got these people alive like Abraham. So when we see Abraham walking around and going to, the Abimelech of the Philistines, and then he goes to um, the Pharaoh of Egypt, and he has two different events. All this is happening while over the Euphrates in the Iraq area, and in the northeastern part of where Abraham was walking around, that the whole concept of Babylon is taking place. Like he's in a world that's just full of corruption everywhere. So this is a big deal. This was a really big deal. So I just, hopefully it's encouraging you tonight. We're going to go into deeper aspects of this in following weeks. All right, guys, if you have any questions about anything I talked about, just go ahead and put them in all capitalization and put them in the chat, and I'll be happy to look at them. Yeah, words in red. This is a common thing a lot of people seem to forget is they think, they're 40, 50 years old and they got a PhD or something, that they're super smart. They may have an intelligence of 200. They may have an IQ that's somehow rated or tested to be at 200, which is really, really, really smart. I mean, I know a guy who I believe his intelligence is probably like 170. Dude's super quick, brilliant guy. And, that doesn't mean he's made horrible choices in his life. That doesn't mean you have wisdom just because you can think quick, or that you can understand certain concepts quicker than everyone else around you. It doesn't mean you have wisdom. So this is like this Gnostic idea of glorifying knowledge that has always been a part of the occult. It's literally what the watchers were reprimanded for in the book of Enoch, for teaching mankind the secrets of heaven that they were striving to learn. And with those secrets of heaven, they also taught them, destructive things, like how to do enchantments and sorcery, and literally occultic worship of the false gods of their children, the Nephilim. Also taught abortion. They taught them horrible things as well. So all right. So Miss Marsh is asking, do you think they will try to deceive us by showing Babylon Tower that is in the sky right now? I'm only guessing you're probably referring to something like Project Bluebeam, where they claim to be able to broadcast holographic images of large things in the sky. I don't personally think that they're going to build another Tower of Babel. And I don't think they're going to do anything like that. As far as me personally, I don't think they will. I think the reason that anything like Project Bluebeam, to be able to show large holographic deceptive images in the sky, is for the potential alien invasion. So they can show, a big mothership in the sky or something like that. I don't think it's for the sake of them showing a Tower of Babel concept. Because technically, with the modern narrative they've created, the modern lies they've created, you don't need a physical structure like the Tower of Babel, because they claim they have rockets, right? They think the rockets will take them to the heights of the heaven. And there would be no, even though they it's crazy. They talk about building a space elevator to the moon, which is crazy. That's something that's been kicked around for a long time and never truly under any kind of potential development, or even the fakery of trying to develop it. They haven't even started pulling taxes from nations to try to develop something like that, because I don't think that's truly going to fit in line with their agenda, to try to mass deceive the world with some sort of gods returning through an alien style appearance. That's just my personal speculation. Unfortunately, I can't show you a lot of scripture on that. Dan Perez, it is Nimrod. I'm giving you the shortcut, but go check out my Polyon video. It's on my popular uploads on my channel. And I show you through the scriptures that the Antichrist, the beast of Revelation 9 and 17, and also 13, the beast that comes up out of the pit, it is Nimrod. And I go through a lot of scriptures, and I even go through Egyptian archaeology, and I go through Egyptian history, and that is the thesis I have put forward. He just comes back. This is why Revelation 17:8 says that he's the one that who was, who will be, or who is not now, but will be again, because he comes back. And how appropriate, right? From what we read from Jubilees 11. He's the one that centralized everybody under one common ideology. And that's not going to happen again until Yeshua returns. He's the one that comes back and the world wonders after him, and they're all united under him. Yeah, it's fitting. Nothing new under the sun. Royce Bill, I don't think so. Personally, I think that the Aurora Borealis is basically a atmospheric concept, depending on kind of like a rainbow, except that it's something that happens under certain cold conditions around the north and with the sky and certain temperatures of the atmosphere. Unfortunately, though, I'm not an atmospheric scientist. I can't give you much more of a better breakdown than that. Marsha, we're going to go over stuff like this in future episodes. We're building to these ideas. There's a lot to break down. So we're building to some of these ideas. Michael Stevens asking, did the Israelites use this type of technology? I'm not sure what technology you're referring to bring down Jericho. No, technically the Israelites didn't do anything to bring down Jericho. The Father did. The Israelites were just obedient to walk around the city for 7 days and then 7 times on the 7th day. But they particularly themselves did not affect the actual walls of that city falling in on itself. That was the Father who made that happen. Just, whether it was angels pushing in on it and we just couldn't see them, or whether the Father just, who knows, sent a frequency vibration, spoke and broke the walls down, who knows. But the Israelites technically were just being obedient to be there, but they didn't physically have anything to do with Jericho's walls collapsing in on itself, according to the text. The blood saves. I really don't know, brother. You asked me about my next debate. It's not really a debate, but I've got 2 concepts lined up with 2 different groups of people to talk about some controversial topics. I don't really want to call them debate. I'm trying to call them a roundtable discussion. But as far as an official debate, I did hear back recently from what's his name, the Beginning of Wisdom channel, and he's definitely a supersessionalist, dispensationalist, Trinitarian, and he doesn't like the Hebrew roots concept, even though I don't call myself Hebrew roots. He doesn't like the Torah observant concept. And so I actually have to respond to him. Excuse me. He finally agreed to actually debate me, but we have to get together on the details. You have to determine the format and the actual title of the debate and all that kind of stuff. I just personally haven't had time, because that takes a lot of special time that I've been so busy with Lighthouse. I just haven't had time. I don't know if I'll be doing that anytime soon, to be honest with you, just because it takes so much of my time. Gavin Miller, I'm not sure what tablets you're talking about. I apologize, brother. Unless you're talking about, my mention of Keenum finding the writings of the Watchers dried out on some rocks after the flood. It's possible. I mean, we do see this stuff happening post flood. They're creating Nephilim again, which I've explained in the past as genetic manipulation. This is what Enoch chapter 7 tells us, is that they learned the art of cutting roots and enchantments, and the woman became pregnant and bare giants. And so there's all types of genetic manipulation that can happen through the growth hormones that are found in the roots of trees and plants. So it's very possible that knowledge was a part of what he found, even though Jubilees doesn't specifically say that. It says that the stuff he found on the rocks in Jubilees chapter 8, 1-4, pertaining to, determining the omens of the sun, moon, and the stars. There could have been more there to it, but ultimately, or that knowledge could have just been passed down through Noah and Shem. Not like they were teaching it to encourage lawlessness or to encourage, some sort of unrighteous behavior. But if they're just telling their kids like what happened before the flood, and they're just having that, you're telling your kids, you're asking about life, and they're trying to figure out, why are we being told to worship Yahweh, and why are you telling us he's above the firmament, and why are you doing all these feasts, Noah, granddaddy Noah, why are you doing all this stuff and teaching us to do this stuff? These are natural questions children would have for their dad and their granddad. And then he tells them, well, guys, you have no clue the horrors that we saw before the whole world was flooded. Like, there were billions of people, there were giants everywhere, there was people eating each other, there was mass chaos and murder and death. And it's peaceful now. Like, we came out on the other side because the Father, protected us. But so you try to tell the true history of a guy that's 600, 700, 8 years old. Noah lived to be 950, which is 350 years after the flood. You start telling a true history to all your kids and grandkids and everything, and they start, some of them would take it well, some of them would take it in context and with the right heart, and like, wow, the Father saved you because you were righteous. Genesis 6:8, you had favor with God because you were doing what's right. That's what I should do, because, man, that's a true story to wake me up. Like, I don't want to fall into the realm of those who got judged before the flood. But then there's other kids. You know how this goes. Everyone who has a family knows there's always that one person in your family that's like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this story. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, like I've talked about tonight, you got Abraham in a good way, growing up in Babylon, his father Terah working for Nimrod, chief idol maker in Babylon, and he breaks away from all that because he just realizes, this isn't good. But then there's always the bad version of that, where there's that kid that's like, yeah, you're telling me to do what's right. You're telling me that this is how we worship God, and this is righteousness. But I don't know about all that. I'm going to do my own thing. That's kingdom. So it can happen. It could happen. It could have happened from the writings he saw, but it could have also just happened from them putting together two and two from the stories they were hearing from Shem and Noah. So unfortunately, it's all speculation. I wish we had a really clear record of some of this stuff. Dylan, we're going to go into some of your question here in the episode, in the parts that we talk about present Babylon. So you guys, let me put this up on screen. I made this for a reason. So this thumbnail for this, I made this for a reason. Okay, we're talking about the past, the present, and the future of Babylon. So we're going to get a full, well-rounded context. That's why it's a multiple part series, and we will dig into your question in future parts of this series. Okay. All right, guys. I've come to the end of the broadcast. I really want to thank everyone for being here. Go to lighthouse.com, the group on Facebook. So go to Facebook, type in the search bar, lighthouse.com, the group, and then join that group if you're watching this. Then share the post within that group, because that's how we're notifying and announcing that Lighthouse is coming and telling people what it's about, and they can see the interviews I've done to explain it, and you can share it on all your social medias so that you can help the word get out. Right? This is our goal. This is our goal, guys. Joy is asking, I'll take this to be my last question, guys. Joy's asking about, can I describe the date palm tree thing used as a power pole? I don't understand your question, sister. I apologize. Describe the date palm tree thing used as a power pole. I apologize. I think you might be referring to something that we mentioned on one of our Honor of Kings episodes. I think it was the first season when we were reviewing the Book of Enoch. I think it was like episode 9, 8 or 9. But I don't know what you mean by the power pole specifically. I mean, I know we talked about how the palm tree and the date palm specifically, there's a ton of positive properties that you can use from its oils and also its leaves for healing, which is a lot of people aren't aware of. And this is why, in our opinion, as we concluded from that episode in our research of what Enoch is describing about the palm tree, this is why the palm tree is used for Sukkot. This is why the palm tree is being waved with the triumphant entry of Yeshua when they're singing Hosanna, because he represents the resurrection. And supposedly, I guess the original tree of life was described as like a date palm tree. And so that's, other than that, I'm not sure exactly what you mean. I apologize. All right, guys. I really appreciate all y'all being here. You guys are awesome. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope to see you here tomorrow night. Okay.